Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making your way here, checking things out. You know what to do. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. I am so excited today to be talking with Gabe Liedman about what's the funniest thing I have seen in a while, Q-Force on Netflix. Hello.
My God, I'm so thrilled to hear you say that. What a relief.
This really was fun. I'll tell you, I didn't know everything about it when I got into it. I kind of knew the general setup and everything. So really walking into it with as much of going into blind as possible is just surprise after surprise after surprise.
Yay.
So
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, I obviously want to hear how this all came to be, because for anybody who follows you, I feel like your work on Pin 15, on Big Mouth, and everything else, but especially those two, were made you like one of the perfect people to be like working on this project. Where did it come from?
Well, the initial very seed of the idea actually came from Sean Hayes, the star of the show. He and his producing partner, Todd Milliner, they have a production company. They do wonderful work. They had this tiny seed of an idea, literally just 3 words, gay James Bond. And they were like, there's something here. But they needed a writer, and they needed someone to work with them to build it out and develop it. And I was lucky enough to be called in to chat with them. And I'm a huge action movie fanatic. I love the James Bond series. I love Jason Bourne. I love Mission Impossible. That whole genre really is my bread and butter for what I love to watch. So I jumped at the idea to develop this with them. And I kind of went away for a couple weeks, and I came back to them with Q-Force, which is not gay James Bond, basically. What if gay James Bond isn't gay James Bond, but more of an ensemble piece, and more of an underdog story, what if you were James Bond, but no one believed you because you're gay? And that just seemed funny to me. And the ensemble, I wanted to just tell a bigger story. And I also wanted to have a way in that wasn't pro surveillance state. Also, so it was just a sort of underdog-y, edgier way in.
Yeah. Well, especially making that ensemble, I mean, you're able to represent so many different versions of queer as you go into that. And I'd love to hear about that process as well, because obviously there's so many more versions of queer beyond this, but there's a huge slice of the culture that's right there on the screen, represented in each different character specifically.
Yeah, I wanted to just sort of take this opportunity, which is a golden opportunity. There's not a lot of, queer entertainers who get a studio like Universal behind them to say create something that's LGBTQ forward. So I was this is a golden opportunity. I can't waste it. So it was just really important to me and our 4 main characters to have gay people, lesbian people, trans people represented from the start, because that's our community, and everyone's fight is together, or it should be at least. So I felt what a wasted opportunity this would be if we just told the story of this gay guy, because it's not really the story of the community. It's not seizing the bull by the horns in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you said that, or it should be, because when you go back, and here's the dangerous words, read the comments on the trailer, you get to that point where a lot of people were skeptical that even the people that they're on the same side of, you still have the potential to piss them off in some way going into a project like this.
Yeah, I mean, the scrutiny is there. When you're a part of a community, I think your community really has super high expectations, and they don't want to be embarrassed by you, and they don't want you to fuck it up. So that's the feeling, hopefully I didn't embarrass anyone, and hopefully I didn't fuck it up. But, I think if we were living in a world where there was 9 billion queer forward shows on TV, then I think everyone would feel perfectly represented, and maybe the heat would be lower. But that's just not the reality. As much as there's more shows now than ever that feature characters that are trans or bi or gay, we're still not at a place where there's a ton. There's more than there ever has been, but there's still a need for more.
Yeah, especially in animation. Like, I was trying to think off the top of my head, like mainstream animation, like getting closest to the where you're still showing so many like animated penises in an entire show. But like, even for as much gay queer representation that is in film and television right now, in animation, like I can't name another one to this caliber off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we really are like in the mainstream in a way that like a lot of like more beloved, but perhaps like alt shows like Steven Universe are not, are not given the thrust and the industry, oomph behind them the way we are. So the representation is out there, but it could always be more. And yeah, I pinch myself to think that this is by Universal Television and it's going out on Netflix in every country and every language. It's really bananas.
Yeah. But you do tell big stories during this. You tell really important stories during this, sandwiched between some really amazing jokes as you go along. But you're talking about community, and it does seem like community is a big part of this conversation in here. Family, finding relationships. There's conversion therapy early on in its like I guess, how important was it to still get the message through, and exactly what messages were you trying to get heard?
Well, I wanted to make sure that this team of queer people were not like bootlickers for the state, because that's like really not reality, and it's not what it should be. So I wanted them to be rebels. So I knew that we needed to be telling a big story that's like, a little bit anti-authority and a little bit of the guy, the characters going rogue and having to make their own way. I also like wanted to make sure that we were always balancing it with humor and with just other feelings that aren't political. Like, is the audience laughing? Is the audience turned on? Is the audience surprised? It was like, there's a lot of ingredients that go into it that were just as important to me, because I felt like the concept for the show is the DNA of it is very representation matters. And then, okay, we crossed the hurdle of they are going to put this on TV no matter what. So now we should really be trying to have fun. And let's just make a show that we like. And let's make sure that the characters aren't just educating people about what it feels like to be X. Like, you want to see them fall in love. You want to see them go home and see their families. You want to see them fuck up and have to scramble. Like, all the things that straight people get to do in comedies. You know what I mean?
And I don't want to give away too much of the story here. And it's worth saying that I know we're in a different era there, but in the old days of animation, each episode was its own bottled thing. This is a complete story over 10 episodes. How did you decide, and with the writers too, but how did you all decide the story that you all wanted to tell in that scope?
Well, I made sure to sort of like work it out, or just be aware of what Netflix's launch plan was, because, I've worked for a lot of different shows that come out and various, I've written for a lot of shows that come out one episode per week, and a couple of shows that get dumped all at once. And it's a very different watching experience. Like, I'm a television viewer, not just a writer and producer. So I know like what it feels like to binge a show as opposed to wait for the next episode. And they both have their pluses, but I knew from the beginning that Netflix's plan with this was to release all 10 episodes at once. And so that meant to me and the rest of the writers, there's a lot of writers on this show, that the most satisfying experience of binge watching a 10 episode show is to have arcs that go for multiple episodes to sort of like make you want to watch that next episode, find out what happens. But also it's a comedy and it's really stupid and it's really silly on purpose. So like, we all knew like there's no 10 episode mystery that we're going to be able to write that's going to be genius. So we broke it up into a couple.
How does that actually change the way you write? I guess I'm pushing you further than what you're saying here because making it knowing that you're going to have 10 episodes, knowing that, I watched it in 2 parts. I had to sleep in at one point,
Right.
I was sort of upset about
You're only
that.
human.
I was a little bit upset about it at the time because it's like, I want to keep watching, but you can't. But for you as a writer, does that really actually change the way you would write an episode as opposed to a 1 week type of a thing?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I used to write for Brooklyn Nine-Nine for a really long time. And like, as much as that show does have arcs that are emotional and character-based, like the structure of an episode, there's an ending. Almost every episode like ends with the people who were fighting during those 22 minutes apologizing to each other and, clearing the air so that then you can start next Thursday or whatever with a fresh story. Whereas on a bingeable show, you kind of want to throw something in right at the end that's like, well, wait, what? So that you don't tie it up in a bow. So that there's the momentum to want to just sit on the couch for another 20 minutes and burn through another episode. So it affects the writing a lot. Like the end of, with no spoilers, like the end of episode 4, we introduce something new right in the last 10 seconds that has nothing to do with what you just watched, just as a way to like extend a hand and be like, no, stay with us. Come on, let's do this.
And it doesn't feel like it's forced. It doesn't feel like a chop. It still feels like part of the story. So complete compliments on how you pulled that off.
Cool.
On that right there. You'd mentioned this started with the seed of gay James Bond and taking it further. I'd love to hear if there were other inspirations, because there were other things that I seen, like when I first started watching it, I got what I thought was a very obvious Archer vibe, and the secret agent thing, and maybe you can't escape that. But there are also these jokes in there, and I forget the actual line, but I think one of the characters said, name it what you want. And the other character said, Kelsey, I named it. And I thought, man, what a great like airplane type of a moment right there.
Yeah. I think every character we tried to give them their own kind of like personality, obviously, and comedy game. So I think, like Stat, one of my favorite characters on the show, super low key, super blasé. She's always going to have that kind of like eye rolly reaction to things. Twink's energy is up here. Deb is kind of like the adult, and Mary's, sweating. He's on a treadmill. So like they each have their own kind of like comedy games, but there's a lot of cultural references throughout season 1. We have a big Brokeback Mountain thing, but we've also got LA Confidential in there, Princess Diaries, and so there's these sort of pop culture shout outs. And in terms of the genre, like I think I looked mostly to Mission Impossible and the Jason Bourne series to sort of like, how do we plant our feet in the genre of this spy stuff? So we've got a big mystery in the middle and end of the episode that's a real playing with what I loved about Jason Bourne.
Yeah. And as far as pop culture references go, I mean, Deborah Winger plays a very important role in all of this as well, eventually.
Very strange timing. We wrote that like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, and here she is in the headlines. It's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Back again in more movies.
Yep.
and enough can't be said about the cast, because we haven't said anything about the cast yet. So the cast and the cameos and the guests on here, I mean, I wasn't looking anything up, but it was like, wait a second, is that?
Yeah.
Is that and it's name after name, and I know you've been around for a while. I know you've made a lot of friends in this industry, but it seems like every comedian wanted to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Let's hear about the first cast, the main cast, and then the guest cast as well. Like, how were those approached, and how did everybody find their way in?
Each character is a little bit different. Sean as Agent Mary was Agent Mary from the start. We developed this together for him. When I'm writing, I really like to have an actor in mind, so that their dialogue feels human and grounded, and has like just isn't generic writing. So funny enough, like the character of Deb always in my head was Wanda Sykes. So she was the first person we approached. And she, you know, my mind is still blown that she said yes. Matt Rogers was a writer on the show, and he's who voices Twink. And he's a comedian who I just have like adored from afar for a really long time. His sample script to get into the writer's room is maybe the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. So I really wanted him at the writer's table. And then it came time to cast, and we still hadn't found our Twink. And so I asked Matt to just read it at the table read. A lot of times you get writers to read uncasted parts, and his take on it just was too perfect. Like, it was undeniable how much that part just fit him like a glove. So that was his casting. Patti Harrison is also a comedian who I've really, really admired. And we kind of cast her like against type a little bit. Like, Stat is a very subdued, very low key part. And Patty's comedy is nuts, like just really like a 50 out of 10, wild, experimental, crazy shit. So I just, you know, wanted to see if this person who I really, really admired, what would she be like at a 2 out of 10? And she blew my mind. And then we have a casting director, like, so, you know, it wasn't always me approaching people that I'm, you know, Matt and Patti, I have relationships with, but for like David Harbour or Laurie Metcalf, it was a very traditional reach out through our casting director, sent them scripts. And, you know, I have major imposter syndrome. I'll never get over it. So like, it's hard for me to say this, but it was just the strength of the script. They liked the part. And we recorded everything during like this first and second wave of COVID. So it was like actually a very like hard thing for the actors. They didn't get to go to a studio. They had to like be on a mic with a blanket over their head. And I just can't believe that we got such huge stars to do that.
Yeah, and it does all sound so natural. It sounds like it's supposed to sound throughout the whole thing. So, and I love, as I mentioned, there are lots of cameos,
Yes.
you know, from a lot of the other comedians, and I think everybody usually looks like themselves, or like a cartoon version.
Yeah, that was important to me.
Version of themselves with all the
you
cameos.
Can tell it's Sam Richardson. You can see Niecy Nash. You can. Yeah, Trace Lysette, Dan Levy. We always started with the actors' faces. Yeah.
Yeah, I do love that. I do have to ask, because really quickly, not knowing what the future holds, if there's going to be a continuation or anything, but I'd love to see a spinoff series of Cobblestone if it gets its own series at some point.
You and me both.
I want to know. There's so much going on. I want to know.
There is so much, and there is so much that had to be cut for time. Like, there is hours of just garbage about Cobblestones from the notes of the writer's room. It was our great obsession. I would absolutely love to produce at least one episode of Cobblestones.
Yeah. Sign me up to watch. I will definitely be. And the music and everything was so good in this. I mean, again, the 10 episodes that make up this, everything was so perfect and so much fun. So much fun to watch. So congratulations. Thank you for doing it. And thanks for taking the time to talk about it, Gabe.
This was my pleasure. I really appreciate you watching, and I'm so relieved that you liked it.
Yeah. Well, I'll hope for a future for our Q-Force team, and I can't wait to see what you're up to next as well.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.